Today, we're going to talk about a film that is somehow both a masterpiece and a total disaster. Seriously, imagine a movie that gets shortlisted for an Oscar, gets a 9-minute standing ovation at Cannes, but then completely crashes and burns at the box office, all while being tangled up in controversy. That's the puzzle of Homebound, and that's exactly what we're going to try and piece together today. So let's just dive right in. On one side, you have the international darling. Homebound was shortlisted for an Oscar and got a 9-minute standing ovation at Cannes. Incredible, right? But then you look at how it did back home, and it was a certified box office flop. This is the central contradiction we're here to unpack. So, the big question is, how? How does a film that critics are calling one of the most important of the decade just fail? To get to the bottom of that, we first have to understand what the film is actually about. Okay, so let's start with the story you see on the screen. What is this film that got everyone so excited in the first place? Well, the basic idea is pretty straightforward. Homebound is a 2025 drama from director Neeraj Ghaywan. It's about two friends, Chandan, who is from the Dalit community, once known as untouchables, and Shob, who is Muslim, and their dream is to join the police force. All of this is set in rural North India right as the COVID-19 pandemic is hitting. And importantly, the whole thing is based on a real-life New York Times article about India's migrant crisis. Now, here's where the filmmakers made a really crucial creative choice. See, the real people in that article, they were textile workers. Their motivation was pure economic survival. They just needed to make a living. But the film changes them into police aspirants. Now, this might seem like a small detail, but it's not. It completely reframes the entire story, shifting it from a simple quest for money to a much deeper quest for what's described as institutional dignity. And it was this quest for dignity that really struck a chord with critics. Let's take a closer look at how the film acted as a powerful mirror to society. The film's critique of the system is just razor sharp. For our heroes, that police uniform, it's a ticket to respect. But the odds? They're just completely stacked against them. The film points to this staggering statistic: 2.5 million applicants for only 3,500 jobs. Just think about that. That's one job for every 700 people. The film basically argues that this just shatters any fragile belief you might have in fairness and meritocracy. And you really feel the personal cost of this broken system. It's devastating. Take Chandan, who is Dalit. Now, he's actually eligible for a spot that's reserved for his community, but he applies in the general category instead. And why would he do that? Because of the internalized shame of his caste. He's terrified that even if he gets the job, he'll be forever judged by his background, not by his merit. You know, the film doesn't really focus on big, dramatic acts of violence. Instead, it hones in on what it calls quiet cruelty, these really subtle, soul-crushing microaggressions that happen every day. There's this one scene where Shoaib, who's Muslim, is working as a peon, and an employee just refuses to take a water bottle from his hands. It's such a quiet moment, but it speaks volumes about how deep prejudice runs in daily life. But the story doesn't stop there. Just as the film's message about exploitation was getting all this praise, a totally different story of exploitation started to unfold off-screen, and this created a huge storm of ethical controversy. So here's a quick rundown of what happened. First, we know the film is adapted from the real-life story of a man named Amrit Kumar. Then, an author, Pooja Changawala, files a plagiarism lawsuit, saying the movie copied her novel. But maybe the biggest blow came when Amrit Kumar's own family revealed they were only paid 10,000 rupees. That's about $120, and they didn't even know the film had been released. This, of course, raises a massive ethical question. Can we really celebrate a film for critiquing society's indifference when it's being accused of being indifferent to the very people its story is about? Does raising awareness somehow justify exploiting the people whose suffering you're putting on screen? It's a tough one. So, keeping both the film's powerful message and all this ethical baggage in mind, let's circle back to our original question. What was the market's final verdict? Well, the numbers really do tell the whole story. On one hand, you've got a near-perfect 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and on the other, a lifetime box office of just 4.58 crore. That's about $500,000. A commercial disaster. The gap between what the critics thought and what the market did is just staggering. So, what happened? What explains this colossal failure? Well, it turns out it wasn't just that people didn't go see it. There were bigger problems at play. The state censor board demanded 11 cuts, which is a pretty clear sign they weren't comfortable with the film's message. On top of that, a flawed distribution strategy and not enough screens made it hard for people to see it even if they wanted to. It got so bad that the producer actually said he might not be able to fund important but unprofitable films like this in the future. So here's the key takeaway. Homebound really has this dual legacy. On one hand, it's undeniably a vital, courageous piece of cinema that holds a mirror up to society. But it's also a profound cautionary tale, a warning about filmmaking ethics, censorship, and the harsh realities of trying to tell difficult stories in the commercial market. Which leaves us with one final lingering question. Homebound shows the cost for its characters, and the story of its release shows the cost for its creators. It forces all of us to ask, what is the true cost, ethically, artistically, and financially, of telling the inconvenient stories that need to be told?